Thank you. You may begin with your statement.
Good afternoon, board. I'm asking you not to allow this monster out of his cage. Hold on. Oh, I am the daughter of Dorothy Jean Bohuniak. She was 42 years young, a wife, a mother of 5. She was a very hard worker. She was on her way to work on that day back in 1986. I'm not going to go into details of what happened to her because it's still very hard for me to talk about. And you have all the information in front of you. What I remember of my mom was she was a very beautiful young lady. They say I look like her and act like her too. She had a smile that could light up the darkest of rooms.
On the morning of June 21st, 1986, this man and a friend carjacked a 42-year-old mother of 5 driving to work. They took her to the back of an alley and, for no reason other than just wanting to experience what it would feel like to kill someone, stabbed her nearly 24 times. Now, because of Act 23169, he has an opportunity for parole. Now, this act states that anyone who committed such crimes before the age of 21, that's correct, not age of 18, age of 21, will have the opportunity for parole. Now, let's watch this hearing, and I'll unpack it with additional details at the end.
So as I stated, this is a Public Act 23169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of a parole application for Francis Gaffney, date number 139379. Mr. Gaffney serving a sentence of 60 years flat, no probation followed for murder and kidnapping to the first degree. There is victims in this case. There is also an offender accountability in place that has been reviewed. It shows that gets completed programming, which includes Voices, the Vet Dog program, Alternatives to Violence, Cage Your Rage Anger Management course, along with the religious, culinary, and vocational programming. He's also currently maintains a furlough job assignment. Utilizing a statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offenders will also score on the RT falls from the moderate range risk for recidivism. Mr. Gaffney, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
Why I think I should be granted parole is because I was very young when I did this crime. I was a juvenile, and the man that I am today, I'm a 57-year-old man. How do I say this? I was just a kid then when I did this crime, and the man that I am today is just disgusted with what I did then, who I was then. You know, I've tried to do the best I can and better myself while I'm in prison. I've been in here for 37 years, 4 months, and 1 day, and throughout this time, I've taken programs, and I've taken these programs not having any how do I say this? Any excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I took these programs without having any 5 or 10 years down the road, knowing I had a chance to use the programs to get out of prison. You know, I took these programs because I thought that they could better me, make me a better person. You know, I've taken several of them. You know, I've done hospice, volunteering, American Vet Dogs program, and you know, when I did hospice, you know, it really opened my eyes to what people go through when in end stages of their life, you know, and I learned a lot from that. You know, like with one patient, he was declining and he could no longer get out of bed and use the facilities or shower for himself. And the guy I had to take care of him. We had to take everything that had to be done for me had to be taken care of. And I remember one day I had to, clean the guy, for a better sense of words. I don't want to, and I remember holding him up and he rolled him over on his side. He's facing the wall. And this is a guy that I learned to be, he's like tough as nails, very independent. And he declined right in front of my eyes at 6 months to where he got bedridden. So he's at the bedridden stage now. And I'm holding him up, pushing him towards the side of the wall, and he's looking at the wall, and I'm cleaning him. And he made a statement that I'll never forget. The guy said, "Who'da thunk?" And I didn't understand him at first because I was paying attention to what I was doing. I said, "What do you mean, Johnny? What'd you say?" He says, "Who'da thunk?" And I said, "Thunk what?" And he said, "Who'da thunk I'd be reduced to this?" And when I heard that, I mean, it really broke me down. I mean, all I can do is choke out and say to the guy, "John, it is my honor that you're allowing me to take care of you. And if you let me, I'll keep taking care of you right up to the end." And the guy just said one word, "Okay." And when he had said okay, he literally accepted what was happening. It's the 5th stage of acceptance. And I don't know how to explain it. A light bulb moment went off on me. I learned that day what dignity is. You think you know what dignity is, but I learned what dignity is. And it was very important to help a person have dignity. And the person I am today is that person that wants to help people, take care of someone, be there for them. And that's one of the reasons why I think I should be granted parole. Taking these programs, I took them because I think back on what I did, and I think about I'm broken. I was broken. I had to be broken to do something like that. I just don't understand it. I was a kid, high, messed up, and committed this crime. And I just wanted to fix what I thought was broken in me, and so I took the programs hoping that they can help me be better than what I was. And I took hospice and it made me a better human being. I've taken American Vet Dogs program, take care of dogs. It's made me a better human being. I mean, and boy, did that really impact me. And I am not even remotely the same person I used to be when I was that age. And the man that's fits before you today is going through a lot and learned a lot. And I've done all the programs I can do just to try and get better, to be better than I was.
Mr. Gaffney,
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting you, but I appreciate what you've shared thus far. Talk to us. You keep saying that you were a child and you participated in programs. We heard you talk a little bit about substance. What programs have you taken to address your substance abuse, your mental health? What's your release plan? Those are kinds of some of the things that we want to hear about.
Okay. Well, substance abuse, that is something that I had like a light bulb aha moment in my life where I realized that the drugs and the alcohol I had taken when I did this had ruined my life, completely ruined it. And I had taken reevaluation co-counseling. I used to see a mental health counselor named Levesque and Debbie Benefici up in prison. And I took AA back in the day, and I just had the moment where it just, I swore it off. And I haven't had a dirty urine in 37 years. I haven't had any, and I just completely I don't know how to say it. It is something that I'll never have in my life again. And when I get out, I will attend AA, NA if the board sees fit that I should. But I like you to understand that I will never drink or do drugs again because it ruined my father's life. It's ruined my sister's life. It ruined my life as a kid, as an adolescent. And my house, you know, I love my dad and I love him very much. But he drank a lot. And when he drank, he did things. And as I got older, throughout my adolescent age, I drank and did drugs to escape. You know, it was a great escape for me. Temporary handling with things, and it just set me down a trajectory, the path of doing more and more, up until the day I committed this crime. You know, the programs, you know, that I've done, you know.
I heard you say NA and AA. Any tier?
No, I didn't do any of their programs. I didn't do any of that. I did I went to AA. I went to Rehabilitation Counseling. I've done alternative violence 1 and 2. And as for the drugs, I swore them off and worked my entire sentence. And work was basically my therapy. You know, and I don't have an addiction. I have a swearing off, and actually, I just don't have anything to do with it. I don't want to know it. I don't want it in my life, and I don't hang out with anybody that has anything to do with it. You know, along with this light bulb moment I having to do it, I realize I can't hang out with people that do it because I'm a strict believer now. As I've grown older, I've learned through programs that you are who you hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
And I will have nothing to do with people that are taking drugs, people that are drinking. And so that's how I've dealt with it throughout my sentence. Now I know getting out, when I do get out, there's going to be more temptations out there. So, you know, I plan on having, and if I'm granted, I will request, you know, a halfway house in Hartford, where right around the corner is the parole office, and right around the corner is a church, because I'm a Christian, and right around the corner is also how do I say it, a health service place where I can go, and from my understanding, I'll continue to be able to have Husky insurance until my insurance at the place I have a full-time job at right now, where I'm furloughed to, kicks in, so I can have somebody as a life coach to help me navigate things. And I think that's important, that I have somebody to talk to help me get through what I'm going to transition back to, because I know getting out there is going to be a whole different world than what I left. You know, I've never been on a cell phone, never been on the internet. And so if it is important to where I think I'm going to go to AA, I'm going to go to NA. I mean, as a child, because of the thing that I wanted in my house, my mother made me go to Alateen when I was young, right before, this was all before my brother Gary died. After my brother Gary died, everything changed. And we did my mother would go to Al-Anon, and
No, I'm listening. I'm listening to you. So it sounds as if you really have had some experience with a sober network or sober community. So you know some of the things that you need to do to stay sober when you're out in the community, even though things have changed.
yes.
So since you have not prepared a formal statement, Mr. Gaffney, we do appreciate the information that you've shared with us thus far. We have reviewed your file thoroughly, and we do have some questions in preparation for today's hearing. So what we'll do is ask our questions, then we will turn the hearing over to our victim's advocate, Mrs. Williams, for victim input. The state's attorney will have an opportunity to speak, then your attorney will be afforded an opportunity to speak, then we'll deliberate and give you our decision. Okay?
Okay, yes.
Ms. Chances, we'll start with the questions, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So, Mr. Gaffney, you did write a statement to the parole board,
You did.
which I read. And I guess part of what we usually do is get a statement from your attorney, but we did not receive one. So we're happy that you're here today with Mr. Gaffney. So I'm going to, just based on your statement to the board, Mr. Gaffney, ask you some questions.
Yes.
So you have completed so far 38 years of your 60-year sentence. And I want to go back to the report of the incident, because you said it started out as a carjacking
Yes.
and somehow it turned out. So could you briefly explain how it went from carjacking to the stabbing of the victim?
It's been a long time. It started off with the carjacking, and it started off with me getting in a car and driving, and it's somehow along the way, it ended up becoming a murder. And for the life of me, I don't understand or think I remember why it became a murder, except that we don't want nobody to know that we took the car. We don't want nobody to know it was us. And me and my co-defendant. And I have to this day, I don't understand why I didn't stop it somewhere along the line. I mean,
So whose idea was it to stab the victim? Yours or the co-defendant?
I don't want to take any responsibility of mine off. I'm equally responsible for what I did. But what I remember is see, he moved up from Bridgeport, and when we got in a car, and we didn't want to walk to Waterbury, so we decided somewhere along the line that we're going to carjack the car, and when we carjacked the car, we drove to Bridgeport. Why Waterbury, Bridgeport? Because that's where it's from, and he wanted to get on to Bridgeport now. So I followed his direction going to Bridgeport, and when we got down there, we drove down behind a building, and it was an alleyway. And as I was backing up, he was in the back seat. He stabbed Mrs. Boniak, and from that point on, it just it escalated, and then she died.
Okay, so Mr. Gaffney, I wasn't there, but my understanding is both of you stabbed the victim. Your
Yes.
co-defendant said you started it and he followed.
Yes.
So now
No.
you just acknowledged that your co-defendant did it, but you didn't say you stabbed her too.
No, I'm saying he started it, right? And what happened was I stopped the car and I told him, I said, get out of the car. I opened the door and she got out of the car and she fell down. And as I was leaving, backing up, he said, you got to go back. I said, no. He said, go back. And we drove back. And when I drove back, I told him, I said, you started it, you finish it. And he just looked at me and said, no, it's your turn. And I took the knife, and that's when I stabbed her. And that's how it finished. And I put his life.
So you
I don't
stabbed
understand
her
why.
first, or he stabbed her?
No, he stabbed her first.
Okay, and then what happened after?
Then I stabbed her.
And then you indicated that you waited for about a year and then confessed to the police.
Yeah, what
What did
happened
you
was
confess?
I confessed that I did the crime. I confessed what I did. I confessed my memory's correct, exactly what I'm telling you, but maybe not in the exact same words, but what I just told you. I pled guilty. And I also would like to state that my attorney Fred DiCaprio and William Holden had me take a polygraph as to these specific questions. Did you approach the car, Mr. Tobin? And I answered, Mr. Tobin. Did you stab her first or did he? Mr. Tobin did. And then right down the line, and in my sentencing hearing, that was brought up by Mr. Fred DiCaprio, because he said it's not admissible in court, but he wanted the court to know that what I had confessed to was factual and backed by a polygraph. So I just thought, because the specifics here, and I'm having so much trouble explaining it and commenting because I'm nervous and I'm so ashamed of doing this. I feel so bad that I very rarely talk about it. And I think over the years, my mind, I've had trouble just trying to, cope with what I've done. And to talk about it again, it's hard. And I just want you to understand what I'm saying to you right now, those facts that you just asked are backed by a polygraph. And if you have my sentencing transcript there, it says that in there. So, I thought that was important. You might want to hear.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about the environment in which you grew up with? One of the things that you said is that at age 18, you did not realize the impact to the victim and the victim's family. So can you tell us just in a few sentences what environment you grew up in? Because it's obvious when you said you and your co-defendant went to hijack the car. So
Yes.
obviously you weren't abiding by the law.
No. I grew up in a house where there was a lot of alcoholism. I had a dad that drank a lot, and he would get loud. He would get violent. He would, when this would happen, my mother would grab me and my sister and try to get us out of the house at the first chance when his attention would go to something else. And we would leave the house and have to stay until he would go to bed. And then we'd sneak in and have to be quiet. And then he would get up and go to work and get out of work and go to the bar and come home and it would start all over again. And this happened a lot. And, it got really bad when my mother left my father and left us with him. She left for a year and moved to Riverside, California, to my cousins. And, it just amplified. That's when my sister ran away at the age of 13. She ended up on the streets of Waterbury, and she still isn't the same today. And
okay, so you've been incarcerated for so long, but when I looked at your disciplinary reports, you received 18 of them.
yes.
What was a little concerning was that you had one for fighting in April. I think it was April 24th, 2020. Can you explain what was going on with you?
Yes. That fight was with can I say his name? Is that okay?
No, you can just say another, your roommate or
It was
someone.
it was a guy I lived with, it's my cell partner, right? And I've been celling with him for 5.5 years, give or take, it's right around that time. And he is a first recon Marine. He's a veteran. And he is in for having a PTSD issue and killing his girlfriend. And this guy has had several PTSD issues inside the cell. And this particular day, it was a big PTSD issue. And it got out of hand with him. And I had to defend myself. And I pled not guilty to this. If you look at my disciplinaries, there's 18 tickets. There's only 2 that I pled not guilty to. And both of them tickets are the only ones that I've never done. I've fallen down, I've always taken responsibility for what I did and try to learn from it, get up and move on and not do it again and be better than I was. But these 2 tickets I didn't do, and this is one of them. And I pled not guilty. I told them that it was his PTSD, his mental health, and that he shouldn't get a ticket and I should get a ticket. And I took that
Mr. Gaffney, let me just stop you there. Because if both of you were in a fight, whether or not it was a PTSD, I don't know what he did to you, but what was your response to him?
My response?
Yeah, what did he do to you that it turned into a fight?
Oh, he punched me in the side of the ribs. I backed up. He kept saying what happened was he kept walking up to me and getting really close saying, do something, do something. And I backed up to the cell door and I couldn't back up anymore. And I told him, I said, so listen, Penny, stop.
And so when he punched you in your ribs, what did you do?
I pushed him back, pushed him off me, and I tried to grab him and headlock him and held him. And I actually got him in a headlock and held him. And he pulled out of the headlock. And then after that, he hit me 3 or 4 more times in the face, and I was out of it. And then he had started pounding on the door and said, get the CO, get the CO. Get me out of here before I kill him, was his words. So he not only got a fighting ticket, he got a threatening ticket. And then I had to stay in the cell, and they took him, and I stayed behind, and then they came and got me. And that's when I told him that it's his mental health. It's PTSD. He shouldn't have a ticket, and I shouldn't have one. And so all I did was the best to defend myself. I never swung on him, and I wrote it in my statement. You know, if I'd known this was coming, I would have shown you the statement. And also, this is the only ticket that second ticket that I took to habeas court. But the district attorney had said that there was no what's the word? There's no liberty interest because they didn't take good time from me. And so I didn't have a recourse to give them the jurisdiction to, have the ticket removed from my file. And so I withdrew the habeas because I went through this one time before and I went to court and fought it. And I thought I was winning, but Judge of Town County said he didn't have jurisdiction because they didn't take any good time from me. And I'd like to add, coming back from the DR hearing, and I tried to FOI this, the officer, Mrs. Throwbridge, was telling me that's messed up what they did to you. And I asked her, what was that? She goes, well, you're the guy that, I'm trying not to say his name, the one I got in the fight with, had signed a statement the next day saying that it was his PTSD and that all he did was he made me defend myself and it wasn't my fault what I did, it was his PTSD. And I brought that up and I tried to FOI and get it, and they wouldn't let me have that statement. And it wasn't a fight. And it wasn't, it wasn't him. It was his PTSD. And I'll say that
Okay.
He shouldn't have got a ticket either.
Okay, but we're here to talk about you, and I understand that you're saying that you defended yourself. They didn't remove the ticket, but they didn't take any good time from you.
Right.
So you went on to complete several programs. So you received your some certifications, you received your GED, you received your food safety and your prosthodontic dental technician certification and your service dog certification.
Yes.
Okay. So you also talked about the programs that you completed, and I'll just go through the list quickly and you can tell me which had the most impact on you. You did Alternative to Violence, Basic and Advanced, Cage Your Age, Families in Crisis, and Society of Friends Christian Living. And then you did Voices and Choices.
Yes.
So which of those programs had the most significant impact on you and why?
Hospice had a real big impact. The American Vet Dogs program had a real big impact, but I have to say Voices did. Because Voices got, if I remember correctly, 18 classes to complete it. I think it was 18. And what they did was in these classes was each one would have you set up a case scenario of somebody's house getting robbed, somebody getting murdered, somebody getting beat up. And they kept going into it as well. What would you feel, or what would you do if that was your family member, your mother, your brother, or you? And as I kept taking these classes, right, and kept delving into it and writing my responses, you know, I always thought that I had this thing locked down inside me on how to understand what I did. But I've learned through this class that, you know, how to see it through the victim's eyes. That's what it taught me. And I thought I knew how to see it, but I really didn't, because, you know, in there I learned that, you know, how do I say this? The victims, how do I say this?
Just say it.
I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm having a brain fart. That's true. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
The
They didn't have a choice. The victims didn't have a choice, right?
right. Yeah, they didn't have a choice. But the victims, you know, it showed me that, you know, on the days they're not just hurt by it, but they're continually hurt. It doesn't end. You know, it's not over. And that, it really broke my heart to learn that. You know, like, you know, when they think, I was taught that when they think about their loved one that's gone, they not only think about like the days where you know, they had good memories, but on the holidays, birthdays, Christmas, they're always reminded that they're not there. They're gone. And that broke my heart. I did that. And taking Voices just showed me that the ripple effect of pain that I caused in the victims' lives are still coming to shore. And it impacted me real greatly. It's when I think about it, it still impacts me. So Voices was the biggest impact on me out of all the programs I've taken, because it focused on what I had done for what I'm in here for. And I'm so sorry and ashamed for doing that. I really am. I'm so sorry to the victim's family. There's nothing I'm more ashamed of doing in my entire life than this. and voices showed me that it's something that's never going to stop impacting them. And I'm so hurt for doing that. I feel so bad that I did that to them. I'm not really great at how to explain things and how I feel, but I try. I give it my best in everything I do. That's why I take the programs, because I didn't have a chance of taking these programs, thinking down the road I'm going to be able to use this for hearing. It didn't exist. I took the programs so that I can hopefully help better myself and be a better person than I was, be better than the guy that did this crime. The kid that did this crime, he don't exist no more. The man that sits here before you today is a guy that wants to be better, wants to help people, wants to rescue dogs from the dog pound because they're unwanted. They're being left. They're gonna, if nobody gets them, they're gonna get euthanized. I have the training to do that, and I'd like to rescue them and make them adoptable when I get out. It's one of the things I want to help do to get back to the community when I get out.
Yeah. So I also wanted to talk about the tools that you said you gained. And you talked about listening and how to deal with conflict.
Yes.
So can you tell me, if you were to have that same encounter with your roommate, and now that you've learned about, how to deal with conflict, what could you have done differently?
Wow. That's a good question, because my cellie would get quiet, very quiet, when the PTSD times would come, right? And then he'd fixate on stuff. And he because he's a recon Marine, he's regimented. And we have stainless steel toilets in our cells. And he had that thing shine to a polish. I mean, you could see yourself off it. And when I came into the room, he had a problem with the toilet, marks on it, which is no big deal. You just wipe them off. And I had responded to him saying, listen, the toilet's mine too. I said, I'll use the toilet anytime I need to use the toilet. It's just as much as mine as it's yours. And that was a trigger to him. And I know the guy's trigger. I learned him as living with him, because, you don't stand too close behind him. He gets fidgety. It triggers stuff. Or getting loud. Loud noises trigger him. And I got loud. My voice raised when I said that. When it raised, that's when he immediately shot up across the room and got in my face. And it had nothing to do with the toilet. It was his PTSD. And knowing what I know now in the conflict, I would have kept my voice at a lower tone. I said, okay, Vinny, I'll take care of this. I'll wipe this thing down. I got you, bro. De-escalate it. That's what I would have done in that situation in hindsight. But back then, and I feel bad because I wish I could do more for him. Because he's my friend.
So one of the other things that you said that you learned about, you said that your attitude is a choice that you make every day, and you can have a good or bad attitude.
Yes.
So can you give me an example of a situation where it could have been good or bad, but you chose good, because that's what you said you learned?
Let me see. Okay, in here we get in line to go to chow, right? And there's a lot of people lined up for chow. And up front, they give juice, or you can get water, or milk, or you can get water. And a guy just last week, he stepped out to get water, and then he was standing there waiting to get his tray. And I had stepped up and took the tray, and he thought I'd cut in front of him, right? And he got real mad and got loud. And when this happens, everybody stops and looks, and in prison, there's a thing where you don't want to look weak, you know? You become a victim. And that's what I've learned over the years. And since then, my train of thinking has changed, you know? And when it was escalating with him to this point, right? I told him, listen to, you know, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come in front of you, right? I said, but, you know, I was trying to get my food and you're trying to get your food and everybody's got to eat. I said, here, you can take this tray, you know? And I said, is there anything I can ever do for you? Just ask, you know? I'm here. I don't want to have any problems with you, right? So instead of getting a bad attitude and responding to him and saying, hey, listen, too bad. You know, you stepped out of line. You know, it's my turn now. I had offered him my tray, which was a positive response to that. And it just de-escalated the whole thing. I mean, so that's one of the ways I use having choice, because I've learned that not only that, but I mean, you could be in a bad mood, but how do you respond to things, the attitude, you choose how you talk to people and respond to them. So I've learned to be able to stay on a positive side, you know, most of the time. Sometimes I'm human. Sometimes, you know, you know, you fall a little bit, but I always do my best to stay positive.
Okay. So, you also talked about, your release plan. And you mentioned that you want to continue to keep your job.
Yes.
What job is that? And can you give me one or two
Okay.
sentences about that?
The job is boat works. I've been blessed with the warden and everybody granting it to me. I mean, it's an honor because it's a trust. They trust me because they take me out there every morning, drop me off at Parole and pick me up at night. And
Where is Boatworks located and what are you doing there?
East Windsor, I believe, and it's full time. And I winterize boats. I'm a mechanic. And he said something to me because I had to go to an intense interview, which also very nerve-wracking for me. I get nervous in these situations, and because so much is on the line, you know, it's hard for me. And he said so. I said, my biggest concern is being able to keep this job after I'm out. He said,
Okay.
There's room for growth for you here. So he said, let me keep the job.
Okay. And then you said you would seek parole guidance and continue your faith by staying in church.
Yes.
But I also want to tell you that I read the letter from the deputy warden for the hospice work that you did. And earlier you talked about your American vet dog
Yes.
training program and that you want to follow through with that.
Yes.
So I have to say, Mr. Gaffney, that I think you have spent your 38 years wisely and that you do have value to offer to others. And I read letters of support from your sister and your brother and a friend. And again, your nephew, because I think he's 36, but he has the same name as you. And the deputy warden. So they also are going to be there for support, despite the fact that you want to go to a halfway house, and I can understand that. So I want to thank you for answering my questions, and I want to wish you the best of luck going forward, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chance. Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Gaffney.
Good afternoon.
So there's two programs that I'm really interested in. that you've already spoke about, but, you know, when somebody takes a life and it's like a stabbing is a deliberate thing. It's not like, sometimes a gunshot isn't so deliberate. But a stabbing is, you know. It's like I look for change, right? I look for what you're doing to change. And there's two programs that you were involved in. For me, that signify the change that needs to occur. One was the hospice program, and one was the vet dog program.
Yes.
Can you talk to me just a little bit more about what happened for you? How your psychology changed through taking and being involved with those two programs?
Over the hospice, I learned the value of life. I've learned what dignity means, you know. It gave me a place, how do I say this? It gave me a place to give love back where I thought I was so broken from what I did that you know, nobody's gonna want me to show them the kindness that, you know, and the love and trust me to take care of someone. That the hospice program, I don't know how to explain it. It was an honor to do and still do. What it did for me was show me that I'm still human. You know, I can't explain what I did done to me inside as a kid. You know, but as a man, I took hospice hoping that it would help mend me, maybe help me be a better person, help me to want to help people, and it did. You know, hospice wasn't a job. I mean, I worked 7 days a week in a kitchen for 10 years. That's a hard job. And I did the hospice volunteering on top of that. And I would work all day just looking forward and thinking about my patient down there, especially the one Johnny Connor I was talking about. I mean, that guy broke my heart open and made me understand that I have something to give, you know, something that's worth giving. You know, when we go to the vet dog program, that's a whole nother level. I mean, talk about self-sacrifice. I mean, I get a puppy, beautiful little puppy given to me, and his life, I'm responsible for. You know, I mean, who does that to me? Nobody. And then I raise him and I teach him 58 commands. And the hardest part about it was, you know, when the dogs, you know, we get the dog at 2.5 months old, 2.5 months old. Now when he turns 14, 16 months old, I have to give him away. I have to give the dog, it has to go to this next level of training. And that hurt. And I learned what self-sacrifice is. I also learned that with a dog, you know, there's two ways you can teach a dog. One is to manage his behavior, and one is to teach him and correct the bad behavior. And it's not necessarily bad, but these are not pets we're taught. So if they're not doing what you're trying to teach them, then it's, in essence, it's not bad, but it's, you know, it's not what you want. So bad behaviors are maybe the wrong word. But if, for instance, when I got Jace for a puppy, I'd have a trash can on the ground in the cell, and he would get into it. And I'm like, no, So I can do two things. One, I can manage it, which is good, it works. Take the trash off the floor and put it up on top of the counter so he can't get into it no more. Or two, teach him how to not, teach him that it's wrong to get into the trash. And I learned that as I was trying to teach these dogs, and they're not getting it, that it's not their fault they're not getting it, because we're trying to teach them how to navigate a human world, not a dog's world. And that, what am I doing wrong in teaching them? Why isn't he getting it? Because obviously I'm not doing something right. So I learned that when I'm doing something and it's wrong, or if I don't like what's happening, what am I doing wrong in a situation? Let me examine myself and see what I'm doing wrong to correct my behavior to get the right results out of it. And that can apply to everything in my life, you know. So I learned that in training the dogs. And many other things.
How'd you feel about those dogs? How many dogs did you have?
5.
How'd you feel about those dogs?
I loved them. I fell in love with each and every one of them. And you know, one of them went on to be Homeland Security, you know, bomb sniffer. One of them wasn't sound, which, you know, is a good thing for a dog, because then he gets adopted and he's a highly trained pet. So he gets to go live a really good life of leisure, you know. And when I say sound, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with the dog. He just didn't meet the high standards of being a service dog to get to a disabled veteran or PTSD, you know. So
that's an important thing to understand. How you love something.
yes.
Right?
And yeah, to love him, to take care of him, be responsible for him, feed him, protect him. I mean, you know, I remember one time I'm taking Jace again. See, Jace was a bit of a wild child. So I can relate to him, you know. And I'm going up to the med line to get my bulk medication. So it's in the beginning stages of where I'm allowed to take him out. He's got to pass a 6-month test. And once he passes a 6-month test, you're allowed, you take him to the chow hall, to acclimate a chow, put him on an elevator. So I take him up to the med line, and you got to watch them at all times, right? And I don't know how parents do it. I mean, because having this just a dog alone takes all your attention. And I look down, and all of a sudden he scoops something off the floor. And so I immediately dropped it. And I got to grab it, and I pull it out of his mouth. And it's a pill. And man, did that really make me feel shocked. I mean, I was like, oh no, he could have ate this. It could have hurt him or killed him. And I felt really bad. And I went and turned the pill in and realized, you know, there's a lot more than just walking the dog around. His life is in your hands. You know, I need to protect him more, watch more. You know, I learned that.
The point is, for me, that you come to take care of something and love,
Yes.
and then it's a matter of giving it away to something for higher purpose.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's what you learn. That's what you learn as part of that program.
Yes, I
Those
did.
two programs are really important to me.
Yes.
So I appreciate everything that you've talked about in the hearing, what you've done since you've been in it. So I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. So, Mr. Gaffney, I have 2 quick questions.
Yes.
One is, I was actually on your co-defendant's 1584 hearing. Did you ever see him while you have been incarcerated?
Yes, I saw him. Let's see. At when we got sentenced, we were separated in the county jail, right? Because had I gone to trial, he was going to testify, right?
Mhm.
And but when we got sentenced, we were brought up on we call them ice cream trucks, the county jail trucks. We were brought all the way up to Summer State Prison, got out, brought to the AP room, processed, and then put in the same cell. upstairs.
How was that interaction?
The interaction was, bittersweet.
Yeah.
But we hugged it out. You know,
And did you
and
see him, so after the sentencing, did you see him any other time after that? Because you both got 60 years, right?
yeah, we both got 60 years, yes. He had the right to argue for 40 years, but I think it was after the judge learned about the polygraph and stuff. What my lawyer said, he said at sentencing, you're both equally responsible, and gave him 60 years.
Yeah.
And
But he's already finished his sentence because he's already out. He was out in the community, and you know he's doing very well. By the way,
good. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Good.
The second thing is, why are you married?
I was married. I just don't have the heart to throw the wedding. I was just telling my lawyer, I don't have the heart to throw the wedding band away. She
Don't throw it away. Why put it in your pocket? Why are you still wearing
yeah,
it?
well, in here I can't put it somewhere because it's in here. So I wear it, and I've been asked, why are you still wearing it? Well, there's love in it. I had
Yeah, no, I
fortune-
just thought it was. I don't want you holding on to, you know. I'm hoping that you can start afresh because that's over. That's over and done with.
Yes.
I'm sure she's moved on, and
yes.
and I want to tell you that when I was on your co-defendant's case, this was one of the cases that really stuck with me because if my memory is accurate, this young lady was either going to work or coming home from work when you guys approached her car. And
Yes.
then the other thing that stuck out to me was that she was still alive when you drove away the first time, but you guys turned back because you saw her moving or something and kind of finished the job. So it's one of the cases that really did stick out to me in terms of how this all played out. But I do understand that you both were extremely young. And at his hearing as well, the victim's family did speak and they suffered a tremendous loss. So I know that you probably haven't heard anything from them since your sentencing, but we do have their input here today. And I just want you to brace yourself because if my memory is correct, and sometimes it's not, listen, I'm older, so I could be off, but they've suffered tremendously. So just brace yourself. And I'm done with my questions. So I am going to turn it over to the victim's advocate now for their input. Thank you for answering our questions, Mr. Gaffney.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Williams.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a statement from the sister of the victim, and then I will be connecting with the daughter of the victim, who will also address the board today. Dear members of the board, I am writing to express my profound concern regarding the potential parole of Francis Gaffney, who was convicted of the horrific kidnapping and murder of my sister, Dorothy Bohuniak, 38 years ago. The pain of losing my only sibling continues to reverberate through our family, and I feel compelled to share our story as you consider his parole. Dorothy was a bright light in our lives and a loving mother of 5. She was known for her kindness, laughter, and unwavering spirit. A dedicated employee at Duracell, she was kidnapped and brutally murdered on her way to work that fateful day, suffering multiple savage stab wounds. Our family endured an unimaginable anguish after her sudden disappearance went unexplained. When she didn't show up for my nephew's high school graduation, we grew increasingly anxious, fearing the worst. Unbeknownst to us, she had been brutally murdered. Her identity, initially unknown to authorities, as her purse was discarded in one nearby town, her car set ablaze in another, and she was slaughtered in yet another town, all making proper identification near impossible. The delay in identifying her body prevented us from finding out the truth sooner. prolonging the torment of not knowing where she was or why she had missed one of the most important moments of her son's life. The details of her death, a senseless act of violence, haunt us to this day. It was not just a crime against her, it was an act that shattered our family and forever altered the course of our lives. The impact of Dorothy's loss is immeasurable. Holidays are tinged with sadness, birthdays serve as painful reminders of her absence, and milestones are shadowed by the grief we carry. Each member of our family has had to navigate this unthinkable tragedy, grappling with our loss while striving to honor her memory. We often wonder about the life she could have lived, the joys she would have shared, and the future that was stolen from her. While I acknowledge that rehabilitation is an important aspect of the justice system, I urge you to reflect on the brutality of Francis Gaffney's actions. Considering the nature of the crime, a murderer like Mr. Gaffney should be denied parole. His disregard for human life shown in this horrific murder demonstrates an extreme threat to public safety and a lack of reintegration. Granting parole would not only jeopardize the security of the community, but would also deny justice to our family, undermining the profound loss and trauma we have endured. Parole in this case would fail to acknowledge the severity of the offense and the irreplaceable impact on the lives left shattered. It is essential to consider the lasting consequences of his crime on those who loved Dorothy. We seek not vengeance, but justice, a commitment to ensuring that no other family has to endure the heartache that we have faced. I implore you to consider the wishes of those who love Dorothy and to keep her memory alive by denying parole to her killer. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope you will weigh the gravity of this situation with the compassion it deserves. Sincerely, sister of the victim. And one moment while I contact the daughter of the victim who would like to address you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may begin with your statement.
Good afternoon, board. I'm asking you not to allow this monster out of his cage. Hold on. Oh, I am the daughter of Dorothy Jean Bohuniak. She was 42 years young, a wife, a mother of 5. She was a very hard worker. She was on her way to work on that day back in 1986. I'm not going to go into details of what happened to her because it's still very hard for me to talk about. And you have all the information in front of you. What I remember of my mom was she was a very beautiful young lady. They say I look like her and act like her too. She had a smile that could light up the darkest of rooms. She liked everyone that she met, and everyone who met her liked her too. She was always happy. She was an amazing cook. She just loved her job at Duracell Battery. She just got the supervising position. She was so happy. She was always so much fun to be around. I didn't get much time with her because of her work schedule and because of those monsters took her from me. I was asked to describe how all this has affected our family's lives. On June 21st, 1986 was and always will be a day that totally ruined our whole family's life. On that day, June 21st, 86, it was supposed to be a very happy day for our family. My brother Sammy was to graduate high school with his classmates. My mom was over the moon with joy. Sammy was a mama's boy, but that never came. She never came home from work. We got a knock on the door instead, telling us that they found her body. So Richie and my dad had to go to Bridgeport to identify her body. They kept a lot of details from us, Sammy and myself, because we were so young. But with people talking over the years, the details were revealed. My brother Davey, what I remember of Davey, he was a lot older than me. He was a bass player in a band that played at weddings and dances. I remember my mom ironing his shirts with all the ruffles on the front of it. And I would sit and watch her, and we would laugh about things. After my mom's death, he moved to New York, one to further his career in music, and also to try to get away from the horrific memories of the way they took her from us. After a while, I guess he couldn't take it at life anymore, so in 1997, he took his own life. And again, my brother Richie and my dad had to identify another family member's body.
What?
My brother Richie was also so happy. He always had the biggest smiles on his face, loved playing soccer. Always the life of the party, always fun to be around, until that awful day on June 86 when I saw the light in his eyes go dark. I always remembered him with a drink in his hands, trying to be happy. But deep down inside, after identifying your mom and your big brother's bodies, I guess the only way he could smile was to have a drink in his hands. So with drinking so much, it turned into cancer of the liver, and he lost his life in March of 2010. Growing up with my brother Robbie was always so much fun. He always protected me from my other brothers. I was the youngest and the only girl. My mom got to see Robbie get married in March of 1986. We have some beautiful pictures of her. She was so very happy. She was so very happy for the two of them. She looked so pretty in her pink dress with flowers on it. Who would think that we would have to bury her in it 2 months later? I can't really talk about how this has affected Robbie, because when I do get to see him, we don't talk much about mommy. It's still very fresh in our thoughts, in our hearts. We just talk about life, how life is going. Sammy was definitely a mama's boy. He did everything together growing up. Sammy was into sports in high school. And my mom made every track meet and every football game, home or away. She was so very proud of him. She would be in the stands yelling, "That's my boy." Number 57. Sammy would introduce my mom to all his friends. They also called her mom. Sammy was very excited to graduate high school and to see mommy in the stands with the biggest smile on her face. But that day never came. Instead, we got a knock on the door telling us that our mom was not coming home. They took that very special day away from my brother. To this day, Sammy has not visited my mom's grave. It is still very hard after 38 years to even talk to her, to talk about her. We do talk about the happy memories that we have. We just don't talk about that day. Did I mention that Sammy went to school with these two monsters? Now it's my turn to tell you how it has affected me. I was only 16 years old when I lost my mom. Who knew how much time we were going to have left together? At 16, who wants to hang out with their mom? On the weekends, you wanted to be with your friends. She always made delicious Sunday dinners, though. She would always make me a special plate because she knew I didn't like peas or onions. And the rules at the table were you needed to finish what's on your plate, or you couldn't go outside or watch TV. As the only girl, I never got to have those talks with my mom about boys or anything else. So when I found out about my mom, I went a little off the deep end, drinking very heavily and not caring about anything. And I ended up getting pregnant at the age of 17. I almost died from the complications of being pregnant. It was very hard on my dad, not so much about me being pregnant, but me almost dying. They gave birth to a little boy, 4 pounds, 5 ounces, named Philip, on October 22nd, 1987. Philip was a happy distraction in our lives. They finally caught the monsters after a year. As the trials were going on, and again, my dad didn't want me to involved with it. All he told me about the trial was they got 60 years to life with no chance of parole. A few years later, I gave birth to another son named Matthew on June 21st, 1994. Yes, that is the day that my mom was killed on. Instead of us always thinking of that day as being an awful day, we were blessed to think of it as a day of happiness. And in my heart, I will always know that that day, what that day is. But the angels wanted me to have happier thoughts of that day. The hardest days for me are her birthdays, which was April 16th, Mother's Day, seeing all the daughters and hanging with their moms. I never got that chance, and neither did she. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of my mom. Every day is hard for me. I tried to cover the pain with drinking and drug use for more than 20 plus years of my life. Then I realized that I was just covering up the pain that they caused me. So about 15 years ago, I put down the bottle and threw away the drugs. I went to see my mom at her gravesite and had a very hard cry and told myself that I can do this. I was doing good with everything up until 2017. I received a letter from Victim Services stating that Tubin wanted an early parole. And we had to go to the jail and hear for the first time the horrific details. I had to hear for the first time the horrific details of how they brutally murdered my mom. I had to hear for the first time what they did to her. I have not been able to get the images out of my thoughts since that day. After that day, I went into a deep depression. I'm trying to live a happy life, but when you go through so much pain, and then you have to relive everything all over again. Then 3 years later, you let the monster out of jail because of his age at the time of the brutal murder. He was 17 3/4. I go to work and come home. I don't like to go out anywhere because I'm afraid that I'm going to run into him. And I just found out last week that he's living in Waterbury, so definitely don't like going out anymore. And now I received a second letter stating that Gaffney wants an early release. My understanding was 60 years with no chance of parole. That's not even half of his time. He doesn't deserve a hearing. He deserves to rot in jail. My mom didn't deserve what you monsters did to her, only because she was at the wrong place at the wrong time. She was just going to work. We missed out on 38 years with her. You deserve nothing but to rot in jail, you monster. Please don't allow for the early release of this monster. He has destroyed so many lives. My mom also missed out on watching her 6 grandchildren being born and growing to absolutely beautiful children, to adults, to having their own children, 6 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. Please don't allow him out. Our family can't deal with this as it is. Lisa, I'm all done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you. At this time, attorneys will be afforded the opportunity to make a statement. We will begin the state's attorney to tell us any comments or statements you'd like to make.
Yes, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Formicella. I'm a Deputy Assistant State's Attorney for the Judicial District of Bridgeport. In Bridgeport, my juris number is 444343. I was going to begin with a recitation of the facts of what happened to the victim in this case. However, the words of the victim's sister and victim's daughter pale in comparison to anything I could say about the heinous nature of this crime and the senseless nature of this crime of a young mother being stabbed to death, and not all at once, but then someone returning to finish the job. The facts in this case are despicable, and I would ask the court to consider, the board to consider the heinous nature of this crime in making its decision. There were a couple things that I asked the board to consider based upon the DIS that was provided to my office and was provided to the board. Number one was I found that in a certain point of view that Mr. Gaffney was separating himself from culpability regarding this crime, or at least in the view of the author of the DIS. That he focused on his co-defendant initiating the stabbing, that he also filed multiple habeas petitions and other ways of challenging his sentence, not just DOC tickets, but his sentence and the crimes in which he was convicted, in order to avoid taking responsibility for what he had done. Ultimately, those habeas cases were dismissed. However, Mr. Gaffney did pursue those to remove the conviction of the crime that he committed. I would also ask this board to consider that at the time that he pled guilty under the Alford Doctrine. It was not a straight not guilty plea. I would ask this board to also consider that just about 4 years ago, he was involved in a fight with his cellmate. Mr. Gaffney did explain the circumstances regarding that fight and how he has subsequently learned to manage personal relationships in a different way, but this was only 4 years ago. I would ask this board to consider Mr. Gaffney's plans regarding substance abuse treatment. Mr. Gaffney, at the time his pre-sentence investigation was done, the individual that prepared the report found that he had serious substance abuse problems at the time of the offense. I would suggest that initially in the information he disclosed under the DIS, his plan was insufficient to manage potential substance abuse issues when he re-enters the community. He did today say that he would go to NA and AA meetings if that were to be determined by the board. However, I would say that that is insufficient insight into the illness that is addiction, and that Mr. Gaffney should have engaged in the tier programs during his period of incarceration in addressing serious substance abuse issues. I appreciate that Mr. Gaffney believes that he has any potential substance abuse issues under control and that he's got this in his words. However, substance abuse is a very serious problem. I believe that is insufficient. His understanding into substance abuse is insufficient at this time. I do believe that Mr. Gaffney has done tremendous work working with hospice patients as well as in the vet dog program. He should be proud of himself for that work that he's done. However, at this time, the Office of the State's Attorney would oppose his immediate release. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Attorney Hoffler, if you have any remarks or statements you would like to make, you may do so now.
The board knows me for a number of years. 20 years I've been a practicing attorney. I never had a more heartfelt hearing than the one we're having today. Over the last 8 months, I've been able to meet this man. And in 20 years, I feel that he's one of the most remorseful people I've ever met. Not only was he remorseful, I don't believe he really had an intention of getting out. Sometimes you meet clients and they're pre-orchestrated in how they want to manipulate the system and figure out how to get out. And you sense that immediately with a client. We've had several meetings, and the only thing that I can tell you is that we have been stuck in a place of remorse. And most of our conversations have been about that. Most of our conversations have been about how he struggles with the shame of what he's done. Most of our conversations have been about him waking up in the morning, reliving this incident of shame every day of his life. He's been reluctant to talk about the future because he really didn't feel that he had one. I realize the victim's words were more than heartfelt. Any human being would understand the pain that she's in, and we want to recognize that. But the Miller Graham parole hearing mission is to look at individuals who committed these crimes at a young age and probably didn't have the maturity or understanding to understand the consequences of their behavior, and that maybe the cases should be reviewed. Mr. Gaffney's not asking this board to immediately release him. He's willing to follow any conditions or that the board has in granting him a parole. I don't think that he's orchestrated anything here today. If anything, he's been nervous. He's been forthcoming, but I was here an hour early, and most of our conversations was about the collateral damage that he's caused. We didn't really realize the impact of that collateral damage until after we heard from the victim. But he's been thinking about the collateral damages and the mere fact that this was brought to his attention today, the impact that not only had on the victim, but on the victim's family, has put him in grief also. And definitely not comparing him to the victim, but his nightmare of what he caused has come to life today. He's also talked, and we've also talked about the fact that the incarceration is one punishment, but the mental anguish of what a human being could do to another is another punishment. He doesn't get to escape that. I think today he was overwhelmed, full of anxiety and fear. But I think out of all the inmates that I've ever met, he really brings a genuineness to remorse grief, and rehabilitation. How the board decides to choose. I believe Mr. Gaffney is man enough to accept. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Formichella, for your statements. We also appreciate the input from the victims. You know, this case is very difficult. Unlike the other two cases we've heard this morning, this man has not received the commutation. So he served
38 years.
of his sentence of the 60 years that he's received, with the intention of serving that entire sentence until this new law arise. So we have to take into consideration, as I've been saying all day, what the law challenges us to review, and that would be his risk. And according to our assessment, he's a moderate risk. His behavior in the facility, and according to my documents, he's received a number of disciplinary infractions. However, there was 15 years between one
Yes.
and his last
And the
one.
current.
And his rehabilitation, and our thoughts in terms of how Mr. Gaffney will remain in the community and be a contributing, law-abiding citizen without risk, committing any further crimes. So we have to take into account his age, the injury and impact to the victim, which we know will never change. The nature and the circumstance of this offense cannot change as well. So we have to take the work that Mr. Gaffney has done thus far into consideration and weigh them against everything that we've heard here today. So we will start our deliberation process with Ms. Chance.
You know, I read the entire case of his co-defendant before I read anything. And then I had to wait before I started on Mr. Gaffney's case because I wanted to put the co-defendant aside. But as you know, that the first question, one of the first questions that I asked is, the co-defendant was blaming Mr. Gaffney, and Mr. Gaffney said it was the co-defendant. But when he talked about the person, he was driving the car, Mr. Gaffney, and his co-defendant. So I'm assuming that the co-defendant did the stabbing, the first stabbing, and when they backed up the car and went back, he did the secondary stabbing. And one of the things that I've read through every document that I did is Mr. Gaffney struggled for years in how to apologize to the victim's family, how to say he was sorry, and how ashamed he was of what he did. I also read when he started the programs, he had no clue that he was ever going to get out. And I looked at what he said is that the only way that he could show remorse and honor the victim's family is to live what's left of his life to help others. And he was doing that by volunteering to do the hospice program and the vet dog program. So I sensed, that after, and I believe that started after the age of maybe 33, I think, was when he had a lot of life-changing events. He wrote a letter, a statement to the parole board, and in it, he outlined all the things that he has done since he's been incarcerated, and the things that he has done that has made a very significant impact in his life. One of the things he said is he learned the value of life. And I think that was quite evident today when he heard the testimony from the victim's daughter and the victim's sister. And yeah. So he realized that once he knew what the value of life meant, he knew what dignity means. And that kind of helped him to mend himself. One of the other examples that he talked about was having someone else's life dependent on him and in his hands. And that's how he described the 5 dogs that were given to him to train. He felt that their lives were in his hands, and it was up to him to ensure that they lived and that they're able to serve others. And that was the other way he felt that he could make what he did. It's another way that he could make things right. So, for each of the things that he did during his incarceration, the certificates that he gained, the dental technician certificate where he was able to assist in helping others, obtain their prosthesis during incarceration. That he alluded that he was a kitchen for 10 years and that he was able to, maintain inventory, and that it was not an easy place to work, but that it was a very humbling experience for him. And the Voices program really hit home for him. And I think no matter what you learn in the Voices program, you will not realize the true impact until you have learned or gained insights into the effect on the victim's family, which Mr. Gaffney did today. I did hear the input from the state's attorney today, and he gave his reasons for why he does not feel that Mr. Gaffney should be granted parole today. And he said Mr. Gaffney separated himself from the co-defendant and filed all the habeas and pled guilty under the Alpha Doctrine. But again, I think he did that probably at a lot younger age than he is today. In terms of his substance abuse, he did some acknowledgement there but did not take a tier program. He did indicate that at the time of the offense that he was he had a problem with alcohol and LSD. So I think after 38 years, and I looked at the tickets, I think perhaps one ticket back in 1993 was related to substance abuse, but not since. So I listened to his attorney today, Attorney Hoffler, and he talked about his conversations with Mr. Gaffney, and that he feels strongly that the programs that he has taken has made him a better person, and he did the programs not to get out of prison, but to try and improve the quality of his life by giving back to others. And I'm still here thinking about the impact to these children of the victims. And I am absolutely and truly, I cannot know what they're feeling and what they're going through. But overall, in looking at the 23-169, which we are required to look at, we have to look at the risk assessment, the age at the time of the offense, how he has lived his life in the last 38 years, what he has done to demonstrate that he's a changed person, his rehabilitation through the programs, and what he has given back to others, and his intentions for how to continue his life once he goes back in the community. This is a very sad and serious case. Take all of that into consideration. And my decision lies with the 23-1-69 reasons for having the hearing today. And having said all of that, I would be in favor of Mr. Gaffney's release.
Thank you, Ms. Chance. Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's no doubt that the family has been affected more than I think any of us can conceive. Certainly, my thoughts and concern goes out to the family. And I heard the state's attorney, I heard the family. And it's unfortunate for me that when the decision's made to give out sentences, that it does not include a period of supervision and follow-up. That in itself, in my opinion, is dangerous to public safety.
Yeah.
Don't know why it continues to occur. So Mr. Gaffney has done a great deal of work. Mr. Gaffney is not the same person that he was when he came in. He has participated in programming that absolutely changes a person or allows them to get in touch with what's going on with life itself. You know, and as far as 23-169 is concerned, you know, I believe that Mr. Gaffney has met what the intention was there, right? So the thing here is that if we don't grant parole, that means Mr. Gaffney goes to the end of his sentence and goes out into the community without any supervision whatsoever. So that means that he's been in prison at that point some 42 years, does not have the connection with a parole officer. The last time Mr. Gaffney stepped in the community was 1986. What is in the interest of public safety is that Mr. Gaffney get supervision, that he's allowed to, you know, reacclimate himself with supervision. You know, so that when he is released, which is, you know, and I appreciate the victim saying that somebody told her that he's going to do 60 days or 60 years, all of it. And that's just not the case, because when Mr. Gaffney was sentenced, there was good time that was attributed to a murder offense. So my estimation, he has almost 14 years worth of good time that came off of his sentence because of his behavior while he's been incarcerated. So it's not a 6-year sentence that he's going to do every day for day, like what happens today. You know, for me, it's like not only does he need 23-169, but I believe it's, you know, it's in the best interest of public safety that Mr. Gaffney have the support and supervision of parole and community services as he's released. So for that reason, I would support his parole.
Thank you, Mr. Poles. You know, in listening to what both of you have said, you know, unfortunately, victims are told frequently that this is what the person's going to serve, and sometimes that can be very misleading due to changes in law and different things that are applied in prison. I remember the victim's daughter speaking at the co-defendant's prior hearing. I was on his denial, and I believe I was on his rehear. Some of the things that she shared today, she shared during that hearing. She's very emotional today. And I can understand how ripping the Band-Aid off just keeps adding to trauma over and over again. And my heart aches for the victims. And as I said, when I was speaking to Mr. Gaffney, this case was a case that really stood out for me because it was so, I'm just like, I said she was either on her way to work or coming home from work. And I remember this vividly. So that does not take away from any of the things that he has done to better himself since he's been in the facility, nor does it take away any of the pain that the victims have suffered as a result of his actions, and he and his co-defendant. I do also agree that Mr. Gaffney would benefit from parole supervision. Again, we have these cases where he's serving a flat sentence, as Mr. Pohl said, but even if we were to deny Mr. Gaffney today and rehear him, We still have to wait the 2 years. And then the victim would have to come back and everybody, it's just that it's there, no one wins. You know what I mean? In these cases. And at this point, I really do believe that Mr. Gaffney would benefit from parole supervision given his flat sentence. So I too would support his discretionary parole. And I heard the gasp when he heard that, you know, one of the victims talking about her brother and the things that he's experienced. And he hasn't been able to stop crying ever since. So I think that he understands the impact that his actions have had on the victims. And again, my condolences to them. So for conditions, he asked for a halfway house, which I do have. No victim, family, no co-defendant, and a mental health evaluation. Is there anything else?
The halfway house. Anything else?
So we're ready with our official decision. With regard to Francis Gaffney, 139379, I move that he be granted discretionary parole on or after today's date, November 4th, 2024, with the following conditions, in addition to the standard parole conditions. You are to have no contact with the deceased victim's family. I have a registered victim as EBV. You are to have no contact with your co-defendant. His name is David Toppin. You are to participate in a mental health evaluation and receive treatment as deemed necessary, and you'll be released to a halfway house per your request for residential placement. Did I say everything?
Yeah.
Is there a set? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. All right, Mr. Gaffney, congratulations, sir. You've been voted to parole. Again, we thank everyone for their input and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, so let's unpack this. And there's a few things that I want to say that I thought was disingenuous. And I'll start with just what sticks with me right now is that what Ms. Chance said is that, well, the appeals were made when he was much younger. Do you recall that? She said the DA brought up the appeals, and she says the appeals were made when he was much younger. But the last appeal wasn't decided until 2019. That was 5 years ago. He wasn't much younger 5 years ago. He simply stopped filing appeals, in my opinion, because he could no longer file them. He had filed so many. Now, I'm not going to screen share the appeals because they don't really say anything. It just says on the factual background what he was sentenced, but he keeps doing like habeas corpus type of appeals, arguing, by the way, in these appeals that, hey, it's not fair. My co-defendant is out already because he was 17 and 3/4 and I was 18. I should be treated like a 17 and 3/4. I mean, like, these are the different types of arguments that he's making, and it's just, please, you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're remorseful and you're regretful and you poor victim and then trying to get out over and over and over again. Not to mention his intro statement. It was awful. I was actually considering removing it. It was so slow and just skip to the mischance intro. But I figure, you know what? It's important to hear. And what I say is that I listened to a lot more parole hearings than I even unpack for you. And some parole hearings, you'll have people that serve so much time in prison, and they make an opening statement that covers everything. They make an opening statement when the parole board asks them, how long have you worked on your opening statement? They'll say, it's been 7 months that I've been working on it, writing and rewriting. And he comes in there just mumbling and bumbling, blah, blah. And it's like, I think that just shows what he's even investing into it. And not to mention, there was no, I didn't see any remorse. I didn't see any connection to it. He's like trying to disconnect it. I try not to think about it. And it's like, how do you hear then from the victims and how it completely wrecked her. And it's not, then you hear that there's what happened to her, how it's still how the ripple effect is resulting in deaths, has resulted in additional deaths. And And then the parole board kind of just says, whatever. He's emotional. He's crying, which I don't know if it's real or not. The sniffling, in my opinion, it was just a bit too much. It was more like he wanted to make sure the parole board knew he was crying. So he's going, and it was just overboard. It's just overboard. Don't on one hand say, oh, he shows no emotion for the first hour and a half. I thought none. I mean, it could be I'm missing something. I'm listening to while I'm driving. But I didn't connect to him showing any emotion. And then all of a sudden, when it suits him, all the sniffling is, you can't be, he realizes he's so far from the screen. So, they can't, and he has no tissues. So he's using his shirt. And then his attorney, what's his attorney say? I did not like what his attorney said. Right. His attorney said, my client had no interest in getting out because of I've been working with him for so long, and he used the words, he has no interest in getting out. It's like, what are you talking about? He literally fired 4 appeals. What do you mean no interest in getting out? What are you saying? That was so distant. That was just weird. It's just, and I can't look. Listening to the hearing before the victims speak, I go through certain emotions. I'm like, well, he's been locked up a long time. He seems to have applied himself in ways that others haven't. Because we do see a lot. Some just don't apply themselves at all. Whatever. Is he really a risk? But he showed more emotion, I thought, for himself in the experience of having to give up a dog, which is real. Hey, I can connect with having anyone raising a puppy and having to give a puppy away and doing that over and over again. But at the same time, I couldn't think of a better job than having in prison. I mean, it's like, I've seen this so many times when those who I think are the luckiest inmates in the world to be given an assignment to raise puppies. And the parole board talks about it like they're the next messiah. Like, wow, that's really great. You're raising puppies. What a sacrifice you're making. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, that's got to be the most envious position in the prison. Yes, giving away the puppy is hard, but I mean, you still got a year and like a half with a puppy. I don't, people do that on the outside. People train dogs and sell them to the military. Like, I mean, you're not like, whatever. I don't get it. You're just reharming. Here's the thing. And then the parole board, they talk themselves into, they say, well, because it's a flat sentence and he's getting out anyways, and, we would give him a rehearing in 2 years, and we have to put the victims through that anyways. So might as well just let him out. Or he's a risk. It'd be a risk to the public if we let him out without supervision. And first of all, it's like, really? If you think he's a risk to the public if you let him out without supervision, then he's a risk to the public, so don't let him out. And I should have said this right at the beginning. His good time date is actually right around the corner. Where is it? Sir Richard has all the info. 5/11/2028 is his maximum release date. So that's in 4 years. Now, I think it's probably what you could have done in this case is said, there's other things you could have done than just say you're getting out 4 years early. They could have said, you know what? And I could see like Mr. O'Shea saying this. The victims are still in pain. They are still suffering. And due to that, we just can't re-victimize the victims again. You're doing great in prison. You're doing great work in prison. If you truly cared about the pain and suffering that you have caused, then perhaps you can do another 4 years. And if you want to make the argument where, well, he needs that 1 year of halfway, by the way, you could apply for a halfway house, I think, outside of getting supervision, but you want to have supervision for 1 year for whatever reason. So then maybe say reapply in 3 years and let the family choose not to show up to that parole hearing because it's you know, it's a 1 year difference in that case, and that someone could explain, victim services could explain it to the parole hearing. It's like a sort of compromise. But instead they're like, no, screw you, family, we don't care about you. And at least the DA was there, at least that. Now, let me, I guess I'll read to you about the crime, but I think so. I'm not going to screen share it, and that's because it's so loaded with ads that it's just impossible to screen share. So I'm going to read it to you. So he tried to get parole. Let's see. In 2017, so this is his second chance, or that was for his co-defendant. Anyways, let's see. A former Waterbury man convicted 28 years ago of fatally stabbing a woman and dumping her body behind a store has been denied parole. This is back in 2017. Following a hearing, the State Board of Pardons and Paroles denied parole for David Tupin. So this is his co-defendant who was denied parole, but then eventually we know he got out. During the hearing, the victim's family urged the board to show the same consideration for Tupin that he showed for the victim. It was a case that shocked the community at the time. Dorothy, who's just 42 years old, a mother of 5, had just left her home in the morning of June 21st, 1986, and was heading to work at the Waterbury factory when she went missing. Her body was found. I mean, these are the days when they actually still had factories, right? In our cities. Her body was found a few days later in an alley behind the former Bradless department store at Boston Avenue. She'd been stabbed nearly 24 times, according to the autopsy report. The case remained unsolved for a year. So it was unsolved for a year. And then Tupin's girlfriend came forward and told police that he had admitted to her and his friend Francis that he and his friend Francis had killed her. Tupin, then at 17, eventually confessed to the crime according to the court records. He told police that he and Gaffney, then 18, had attended a keg party on June 20th until the early next morning. After the party, they were walking to Gaffney's house in Waterbury when they decided to ambush the first car and stopped at the intersection they were at. And that happened to be her car. So they're like, hey, wow, let's go ambush a car. The DA had a good point, right? This guy's said to have all these substance abuse problems, and he comes out here and he's like, well, take an A if you want. If this was Louisiana, they'd be like, no, you're not. And the board could have made those requirements too, right? They don't take this stuff seriously. Police said that Tupin and Gaffney forced their way back into her car, and then they drove with her to Bridgeport. Gaffney stabbed her first, and then handed the knife to Tupin, police said. They then shoved the bleeding woman out of the car and drove off. So this report says that Gaffney stabbed her first, by the way, which isn't that interesting, huh? And that's what they were saying. They're saying they each were blaming each other. And he's like, I have a lie detector test. On June 1989, both men were facing the death penalty for the crime, but they agreed to plead guilty to murder and kidnapping charges and were sentenced to 60 years of prison term. So, and some argue, by the way, that 60 years flat is better than life. So it's not like it was a lenient sentence, so to speak. I guess there's differences. So when it's life, it's often 25 to life, and 60 flat, it's like you're supposed, but it's not, because of good time and whatever. Anyways, truth in sentencing, right? But now because of the act, it says, well, he was under the age of 21. I will predict now that we are going to see new acts pass in states like Connecticut that will say under the age of 26, or whatever the new age is when they say the brain is formally mature. It's the same thing. The age keeps moving up. It's like, well, it's 18, now it's 21. Why would it not go to 26 or whatever that age is, right? That scientists claim that your brain is fully developed. That's going to happen. I think that's an easy prediction to make. Now, Well, so they paroled him, so he'll get out. He'll go, whatever. Who knows? And the victims don't matter in these situations. We've seen it over and over and over and over again. And I think this was an easy one. I think you just say because of the victims, you deny. You know what? Like, if he's gonna get out and fail on supervision or not supervision, then he's just gonna get out and fail. That's just a lame excuse. Not to mention, like they said, he got in a physical altercation where he put a man in a headlock, and they just take his word for it that he was a recon Marine and he has PTSD, and it's like, wow, he was such a recon Marine that you were able to beat him up. Is that what it was? I don't know. The whole thing is just, they should have taken that more seriously. That, to me, that just shows that he's still. I don't know. Anyways, with that, thank you, Sir Richard, for the info. And with that, I'll let you go.
We missed out on 38 years with her. You deserve nothing but to rot in jail, you monster. Please don't allow for the early release of this monster. He has destroyed so many lives. My mom also missed out on watching her 6 grandchildren being born and growing to absolutely beautiful children, to adults, to having their own children, 6 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. Please don't allow him out. Our family can't deal with this as it is.